Keto and crime, keto and crime. We uncover the grime on keto and crime. Keto and crime, keto and crime. Now is the time for keto and crime.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Keto and Crime. This is coverage of day 3 of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. As you recall, back in August of 2020, Rittenhouse was accused of shooting 3 protesters, looters, victims, rioters, whatever you want to call them, killing 2 of them and wounding a 3rd. So he is now facing trial on about 7 different charges relating to that. If you would like to hear a breakdown of all the charges that he's facing, that if you visit yesterday's breakdown of day 2, you will see that. Before I get started, I wanted to address the judge's ruling that those that were shot cannot be called victims. That is actually pretty standard. I actually went over on Nate the Lawyer's channel. Check him out. He's really awesome. And he broke it down from an attorney's point of view by the law, because he has not been convicted. They are technically not victims, but they may call them anything else they want, just not victims, because that could paint an undue picture in a jury's eye. It's all about keeping things fair, and that is not uncommon. If you research any case, usually that is the way it goes. They do not say victim until after a verdict, a guilty verdict is rendered. Victim, the word victim has become kind of synonymous since we're in the true crime space. We say victim all the time, so we just expect it's going to be heard, but that's the reason for that. It has nothing to do with being on Rittenhouse's side or racism or social injustice. It's just kind of commonplace, especially when the accused is accused of things like murder. So anyway, just wanted to address that. Again, as we talked about yesterday, the jury is not sequestered, which I think is very weird, but still. They adjourned today, and we first saw Kyle Rittenhouse's lawyer taking some phone calls, discussing things with Kyle. And then we got underway with them recalling one of the prosecution's first witnesses, social media influencer Corey Washington, who I really like. I think he's a good dude. He's a skateboarder. He was out in Kenosha during everything that was going on, skating around, just filming. He was not participating in anything, but he was filming. And as a result, his Facebook Live video ended up being some of the evidence for both the prosecution and the defense, because it caught a lot of things. Even if Washington himself did not necessarily catch it with his eye, his camera did. So they started out by going back into question. He was called late yesterday and went back into questioning him. They watched his live streams in the courtroom from August 25th and began to stop, back up, ask him questions, asked him to point with laser pointers at certain things, and asked him to kind of elaborate on what they were seeing. One of the first images we see is Anthony Huber walking around the Ultimate gas station, which is the name. It's not the Ultimate gas station. It's just the name of that particular gas station that we've seen in all the films. Anthony Huber, who was the skateboarder, the one that struck Rittenhouse with the skateboard and was shot, strolling through holding his skateboard. And then they mentioned to Washington that he was also a skateboarder. And Washington said, yes, he was. And he carries his skateboard all of the time, much like Huber did. And most of the time he was skating around on it, though. He said at the time he was taking this particular set of video, he was holding his skateboard while standing on his feet. But in some of the footage, he said he was, in fact, rolling while he was taking the video. I know it seems kind of mundane that they have to ask about these sort of things, but every little bit counts, especially in a murder trial. So you have to remember that. And then we also saw Gage Groskowitz, which was the dude with the pistol that was shot in the arm, the one that survived, also at the Ultimate gas station, kind of walking through. They did ask Corey Washington what he saw in reference to that gas station. He did comment that he saw a fire that had been set near the gas station, and that was both a tire fire that was set in front of a store not far down, as well as dumpsters being lit on fire, that in his opinion was being rolled at the police, not necessarily the gas pumps, as has been put forth by rumor since. He said in his opinion, the dumpsters were already in the gas station parking lot, and the way they were trying to roll them was out and up the street towards the police and riot gear that were all around. So it was more of they were trying to roll them toward the police rather than the gas pump that had been alleged. But he did say that one of them rolled off the road into the gas station toward the gas pumps accidentally, in his opinion. But you could, in fact, say that one was rolling towards the gas station. Then the camera panned to down the road where the tire fire was, and you saw police in riot gear kind of breaking that up. And then you pan back up to the gas station, and you see a man there in short pants, dark shirt, by the name of Ryan Balch, standing with a rifle. I believe this is one of the ones that Rosenbaum, the first one that was shot and killed, was yelling at when he was yelling both at him and some BLM people, "We only shoot me, shoot me, shoot me." And it was at this point that you see, when he turns back and you see the dumpster that was on fire that kind of rolled toward the gas pumps, you see Kyle Rittenhouse come into frame for just a second, running with a fire extinguisher in the direction of the dumpsters, the ones that were on fire. And they even paused it to let Washington look to make sure that that was indeed Rittenhouse. And I'll drop that clip here. He also said that he had taken note of, he does not know Kyle Rittenhouse, has nothing against him or for him. He just remembers him because he appeared to be so young, had on gloves because he also had a medical bag, was rendering medical aid. It was also chain smoking. And he just thought it was just weird, this dude with, sanitary gloves, chain smoking with an AR-15. He says it was just a strange sight. So he made note of him, even though he wasn't really watching him. And then it kind of turns back to a shot of people running up the road, which was a later frame. And that's when you first see Richard McGinnis, who was the on-ground independent reporter that was a witness to the shooting in the car lot where Rittenhouse shot Rosenbaum. And you kind of see him running up the road, just a quick flash of him running up the road. And then you look over, this is kind of panned into the future, but you then look over to where Washington is either skating or walking, and you see car source lot 3, which was the place that Rosenbaum was shot by Rittenhouse. And it pans in on it really quickly, and I'll put that clip here. And then you hear one shot fired, which of course the prosecution paused it, then started it, and then you heard 4 more shots, and the prosecution said that those were the shots fired, and then at that point, Rittenhouse's lawyer objected and interjected, saying, "I want it to be conceded that first shot was fired by Zemitsky, who was mentioned yesterday as being a compadre of Rosenbaum." And so they rewound the tape, let you listen to it again. There was one shot, and this time the DA Dingle did concede that, yes, that shot was fired by Zemitsky behind Rittenhouse. And then a few seconds later, after a little more movement by Zemitsky and Rosenbaum toward Rittenhouse, you hear the other 4 shots, and those were fired by Rittenhouse. And then you hear more shots fired, but though everybody considered those were not fired by Rittenhouse, those were elsewhere and around. So there was quite a bit of gunfire going off. They immediately asked Washington if he watched what was happening, and it was very comical the way he didn't like being on that stand at all. Uh, he was not really friendly to either the prosecution or the defense on cross-examination, or even the prosecution on re-exam. He was just not wanting to be there. This is not a chapter in his life he wants to relive. And he was very sarcastic. He said, "No, I did not stop to see what happened. I got out of there when I heard the first shot, like any sensible, normal person was, because I didn't want to get killed." And so he said he ran behind an embankment and kind of peered up to see, but got out of there as quickly as possible. I really like Corey Washington. Look for him on social media. I really like him. And then from there, the prosecution said no further questions. Kyle Rittenhouse's team comes forward to cross-examine. They start playing other video that Washington had took, and they hone in on some footage from the 24th, which is actually Monday night, the day before the actual shooting. And you see fire at the Justice Center, which actually did burn down, as well as Car Source 1 that completely burned down. And the whole reason for this is because Washington was on the ground for most of the nights that it was going out. And I'm going to drop that footage here. But basically, he wanted to confirm, since Washington had been on the ground the entire time, what was the difference between fire and destruction between Monday and Tuesday night. Remember, all the shootings happened on Tuesday. So Washington did concede that, yes, a lot more property damage, a lot more fires happened on Monday. And then Tuesday, people boarded up. He said you saw a lot more people out guarding their property, a lot more protection of property, a lot less looting, burning, destruction on the second night. And the defense was just trying to make a point here. And then a little bit later on, they show back at Ultimate Gas Station, they show video of Rosenbaum, who is starting to get upset. And then Washington actually saw him getting pretty agitated and said that he made note of him because he was getting more and more erratic. This is, prior to the shooting, getting more and more erratic. He made note of him, the same as he had with Kyle, chain smoking with gloves. And then they cut to the very famous video of Rosenbaum in the face of the man with the rifle, who they believe was Bach, as well as some BLM people, both African American and white. And that is when he was screaming, "Shoot me, shoot me, shoot me, inward, inward, inward." So I found that very telling that yesterday, one of the headlines that was being run about this trial was that Rittenhouse's defense attorney uses the N-word 3 times in opening arguments. That was the entire headline. And then when you go into the article, it actually points out, oh, he was just repeating what Rosenbaum, one of the people that was shot and killed by Rittenhouse, was saying. It's just amazing how the media manipulates stuff. It really is. It really is. But anyway, that's what Washington said, that he saw him getting agitated. He didn't actually see him do the shoot me, shoot me, shoot me, but he did concede that he was getting very agitated. And he believes what he saw on the other video, which they showed that was indeed Rosenbaum. He identified him and said that was indeed him, and he's obviously saying what he said. And then they kind of moved on to Anthony Huber, who is the one that swung the skateboard at Rittenhouse. And they asked Washington, because he was a skateboarder, could you do a lot of damage to somebody with a skateboard? Because evidently Huber's girlfriend, even after police have asked her, have not allowed them to look at his skateboard, which I think is very telling in a lot of ways, but how they're not cooperating with the investigation. And he said, of course, it's a plank of wood. You can essentially do the same kind of damage with it as you could a plank of wood. And he asked, could it be swung with one hand? He said, yes, if you have proper hand strength, you could swing it with one hand. And then he again said something very sarcastically. He's had no love for either attorney. He said, I just ride on skateboards because that's what you're supposed to do with skateboards. I do tricks, I roll around, I film. I can carry my skateboard with one hand because I have big hands, but I am not an expert on using skateboard as weaponry. So I love this guy. I really do. And so then we turn to more footage of the famous chase that we saw, and Washington identified many of the people that we know that is actually them. And then on recross exam, the prosecution simply reiterated that the dumpster was being pushed toward police, not gas tanks at the gas pumps at the gas station, even though one of them did roll toward it. And then they also wanted to reiterate that Washington did not see Rosenbaum do the shoot me, shoot me, shoot me, expletive, expletive, expletive with his own eyes. He only saw it later on video. And Washington said, yes, that is correct. I did see him starting to become more and more agitated. Did not see that actually happen, but I did see it later on the video everyone has seen. And then he was dismissed. And they called Detective Martin Howard, who was one of the investigating officers, and just had him go through his night of what he was doing. He was part of a detachment that was turning off all the gas pumps because evidently looters, rioters, protesters, whatever, were using the gas pumps to get gas and then setting fires. So they had gone around to make sure all gas station pumps were turned off. He was with his partner, Ben Entrington, who was sitting at the prosecution's table. And then they had posted up on the interstate to kind of give command an overview of the city. And they were also ones going around seeing who was filming, who wasn't filming, to see if there was anything they could use in all the prosecutions they knew were coming once people were caught doing criminal activities. Then they broke for lunch. And try as I may, every time I went back to the live stream after the lunch break, it was just on the insignia above the judges' area, because I don't know if they were in closed quarters meetings or what, but I did not get a whole lot of activity after lunch. So I had to end my summary here. But if anything pops up that I missed, I will look on it on review tomorrow morning. We'll add it to my day 4 summary. But that's where we stand with the Rittenhouse case. It's highly politicized on both sides. And it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it. And I'll be back soon with another great true crime video. Until next time, Keto Krime.